All right. So we'll start on that side of the table. Last week was the first time we played it, or that you had played it, and last night was the first time that you had played it. So thoughts on Quebec?
This is a brain burner, and it's great. Like I'm exhausted in that exhausted game kind of way, and it's really interesting. The planning out your turns. You can plan enough ahead that I feel like it rewards that. You can't plan too far ahead because other people are going to take the spots you want, and I think that's good because otherwise it would just
multiplayer solitaire, right?
And too much thinking, and I think this sort of gives you that nice balance between the two, and it's hits that spot really nicely, and it's at the right length. It doesn't it's like any longer or any shorter. It might feel. I think it's really well done.
I think it plays, exactly as you said, in the right amount of time for what it is. Without the teach, I mean, we're looking at 245. Without the teach, realistically, it's a 90-minute game.
Yeah.
Without the stream, 90-minute game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just that classic Euro, isn't it? I mean, it's that kind of it's abstract. It's got a setting, but the setting really doesn't matter very much. But the mechanisms are really interestingly connected. I made the comment earlier on. If someone had told me this had been designed by Rainer Knizia, I would have totally believed them.
I imagine that's a huge compliment, by the way.
I'm giving it as a compliment, exactly, because it's exactly like those classic Pete Knizia games. Lots of different mechanisms, interesting things happening, lots of stuff to go on in the head. You can explain the rules very quickly and then just go and play, and it's very interactive. You're definitely not doing the solitaire business. Everything's interacting with everything else. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely that lovely thing, and it fits. I mean, sometimes you hear people say, well, it's heavy cardboard, so shouldn't you be doing heavy games, not medium games? I always feel the great thing about heavy cardboard is that it's games that appeal to people who enjoy playing heavy games. And people who enjoy playing heavy games often want something like this, of this kind of weight, because you don't always have the time and the energy to do heavy games. Something like this you can crack out of an evening. It's nice, interesting, and if somebody's coming over and you've got to teach them the game, you teach them first, and you can still play it in an evening.
And like what Trey said, it's mentally taxing, even if the rules aren't super involved, right?
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, same. They've said it really, really well. I also feel that it's really well balanced. I like the development in this game because as much as you have to pay attention to where those cubes are coming out and cascading, I mean, I didn't at all. I just don't like paying attention to that and mathing that out in my head. So I don't. I just go for the chaining. There's other things that you can do. So that's not a mandatory focus. You need to get cubes out there, but just having them out there, you're going to cascade at some point and get those influence points. Paying attention to those rule breakers and bonus points are really beneficial as well. But nothing is like, so we talked about for these spheres, how they cascade. Oh, it seems like you should always go to the first one. Not necessarily, because getting those workers back in your hand, as we said during the game, is really beneficial. And even in that last round, since these count, if it cascades back to your hand, you can, get points
They're
that
half
way
a
as
point,
well.
right? Sure.
So even that scoring I find clever because instead of feeling like, oh, I moved all these here, you don't waste that. It's not optimal, but you're still getting that recognition there, or having things out on the board could even be an end game strategy of like, why don't I just get stuff out there, because those are going to score at a point each. It's actually pretty decent. I like that there's layers to that you can start to say, oh, there's another strategy I could take, or here's another way I could make points, and start piecing that all together. So no, it's a really clever game. I'm surprised it was as far back as 2011.
Well, it feels to me like it's older, right?
See, and I can make a case either direction.
Yeah.
I could, because it's that low rules overhead but depth of decisions, which is more old school Euro, whereas the novelty or the cleverness of the scoring feels fresh and feels new.
The intricacies of that and the development of it, of how that all works together and kind of balances out, that felt ahead of its time for me. So
yeah, I can see it in both directions in that. For me, the thing that I love the way the cascading mechanism in the scoring works. I don't know of any other game that does that. There might be others, but I don't know of them. So
yes, but not in this way where it changes where it starts.
Right?
As well, and then having that citadel that's kind of out of it, but always supremely important. That combination, no, like that seems really.
And I agree with you that the theme, this could be rethemed to something else. No offense, Pierre, but it could.
Yeah.
It's not tied to the game. However, when he points out that kind of historically the importance of the various things and how they changed in the history of the city of Quebec adds to the theme, and the fact that we're developing and building the actual buildings. I appreciate the theme. I don't need it, but I think it does add to the game.
It's nice to see the
I
buildings.
actually like the pretty buildings. Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I don't know if the camera
Yeah,
will pick
there you
that
go.
one up, but that building there with the white building
Oh, you
with
know
the
what?
red
Here,
roof.
let's make this really easy.
Yeah, you can
I
do
don't
it.
know if the zoom will.
Okay.
will
I was
Yeah,
just
no, it's
particularly
perfect.
pointing at this one, which is the white
Okay.
building with a red roof. I mean, that's kind of the signature Quebec building, is that red roof.
Right.
look. And then you look at all the other buildings. I mean, I've only been to Quebec a couple of times, but I recognise a few of them, and that gives a nice
Again,
feel to it.
it ties it all together,
Yeah.
right? But for me, I love that this game, you can plan, like you said, Shrey, and if you find yourself short of workers, you know whose fault that is more often than not? Your own. And so you have decisions to make. Do I take this action, which is going to then allow me to do this, or do I not maximize having my construction to be able to take this really important building, or maybe it's not as important, but I need more workers to be able to do something later. I love that layer of decision making, which is why I play these games to begin with.
Yeah.
And this game has that in spades. So yeah, I think this is a far better and really overlooked. Like, I don't know anybody that talks about this game ever.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so yes, so well done to both Pierre and Philippe.
Yeah, I mean, I hope
this.
more people will see this and pick it up and just get it to the table. I've seen it at board game conventions too, and same thing. I was like, oh, I haven't heard of that, and just kind of passed it by. So hopefully this will bring a little attention to it.
Yeah, deserves it.
And Pierre, really? So 2008. So it was actually designed
Before 2000.
3 years before that. Well done. Like
It was
this is
supposed to come out on the
really
400.
clever and unique for that time period. Yeah.
Quadtennial, is that?
Yeah.
I think maybe
Something like that.
Sounds right.
There you go.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
one of the nice things about I like about the scoring. So this cascade mechanism is really interesting, right? Because it's rewarding you for hitting that majority, and ties are also. So it doesn't go out of its way to punish the people who don't meet it. Like, you still get a point for every cube. I could totally have seen this implemented as if you're not first, you get half your points. And that would just been unnecessary. I think
Right.
this makes the game more like it feels better, right? Because like you get some cubes down, you're scoring some points. Even if you don't get first cascading, you want to cascade at some throughout the game, and that's, you get some bonus points that way. But and that's some of the awesome, like, factoring in. As I cascade here, I score more there. I cascade again. But in general, it doesn't feel punishing to the when you don't cascade, because you're getting a point per cube anyway, and that makes it. I think it reduces the sort of the not meanness, but like the stress that you might feel if you're like, if I don't get this.
There's options for moves, yeah. So if people are fighting over something in particular, you can go somewhere else. And even if somebody beats you at the last moment, you're not out of it because, oh, they beat me and they're cascading. So as much as those are big moves and you're like, oh, you took it, oh man, but
I still got 10 points.
You're
even
still
though you
in
got
it.
11 in Cascade, right?
Exactly. So there's that great development.
Everything you do has multiple effects. You go there somewhere for an
cascading
action.
effect, if you will.
You go somewhere, and in order because you want to do the action, but that's also important because it puts your cubes into a particular corner, and there's quite a number of different things that are happening at once.
I mean, you saw in
really
the beginning,
keeps you
we're
going.
taking moves fast because we're like, yeah, that's fine, we'll do this, this is great. And then as it slogs on, you're like, oh, I really need to consider how this is gonna, and who am I giving points to, and what I'm doing. And so we've played this at 3-player too. It was actually 3-player was interesting. It was a little more open.
Yes.
Though we were not mean in this game. We could have been blocking just to block so people
I
didn't...
think had I chosen a different building, had I blocked Shrey and cut him off, I'd probably win the game by doing that. But I'll be honest, I wanted to win not because I did something negative to you, but because I outplayed you. That's what I'm trying to do more often than not. Like, I didn't have a really good...
In that case, though, you could argue, because of how that scoring works, that is gameplay related and not just take that.
Sure.
Because...
Yeah.
Truly,
not punitive.
No,
right.
And he could do other things, and he could then chain in subsequent centuries another way, right?
Yeah.
His path can continue,
Right.
and he still gets points for that. So it's the same thing that Shrey had mentioned of like it's punitive that you're not cascading, but it's not horribly detrimental. Like you're still scoring points. So because of that, sure, you could have done that, and it would have been like, ouch, really? But it would play itself out. Like it's not.
And the last thing I want to talk about, mechanism-wise or gameplay-wise, was the added little... It feels like such a little tiny little thing, but the actual chaining of your buildings is a huge impact of where it gives agency to why you and where, and the layering importance over where you move your architect. And it's something that I don't think the game needed, but I'm really glad the
as
game
far as
has.
the chaining?
Right, yeah.
But see, there's more, to me, there's even more to that because as we've seen, you need people to want to go to those spaces.
Right.
So you need to actually pick the spaces very carefully, not only for your chain, but are people going to go there? Because even just, if you can flip faster, 2 in the time it would take you to flip 1 that maybe is less delightful, those star points will start to add up and you're going to make the same amount of points. So it can be beneficial to just get them flipped. So if you're going somewhere and you can kind of, there's a little bit of take that there as well, not on purpose, but that the game plays out. Because if you go to this that makes all the reds cheaper and I'm stuck over here.
Somebody's going to go here more often than not first.
And get their 2 out, unless they were really waiting for the later, flip of when you flipped it, but can they risk that not happening this round, right? So there's a lot of like, when I came over here, sure, I had this locked down that I was going to take these places, maybe, unless you just went after them, because they were kind of blocked in for a chain. But I had to make sure I didn't get in my own way with some of these. If I went for one that was going to make another one of mine, like this one was open, you ended up taking it, but I was over here at the time, and I didn't want these 2
to compete against one another at the same time.
Because you're going to go for the cheaper one and take this, right? So there's a lot of where are you, and does this make sense now
so
or later?
Timing and the why.
Yeah.
Like some of these, especially the blue ones, you want to make sure that people want to go there.
Yes.
And so maybe at a certain time they're not valuable, but then they become highly valuable later on.
Very good point. The beginning of a century, these 2 are really hard because getting points for number in your hand, if people aren't beginning with a lot in their hand, not optimal. Getting points for placement at the beginning of a century.
Nobody has anything out there, right? Yeah.
So exactly, you're timing that maybe later, which is why I left it. But then by leaving it, you went there, and I could. So there's that. Yeah, there's a lot to decide.
So it's basically multiplayer solitaire, is what we're saying, right?
Not at all. I wonder how I would play it too, though. I'm really interested to try that out. And see, because I think it'd be good.
I've never played this at 2. The board itself doesn't scale. The number of cubes that you get does scale.
Yes.
And the number of leaders that you have out, and some of the strength of the blue one changes as well.
Right.
But the actual amount of buildings out there doesn't change.
Are going to change, obviously, what you have available for that as well.
Right.
So that's interesting.
So I played it 3, 4, and 5, and I like it at all of it. Although at 5, it is far more tactical because a lot more changes. That extra player changes because the number of spaces on a building doesn't change. That you can put something down and just never get a chance at it.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of these event cards that add just a little, like a nice spice of variety. Like it's the
you
events.
don't know what's coming out.
The events are they change the rules slightly in ways that I think you take into consideration. It's not going to change the game completely, but I think
It's like making sure we got somebody on all the corners in the last turn or something. I mean, there are all sorts of little things.
Where I was going to place that word at the very end, right?
And that race for this one in the at the beginning.
There's a whole bunch of them. Right?
Yeah, there's I think 4 for each century. 4 or 5 for each century.
Maybe 5.
Yeah.
Something like there's 4, and then there's one that's a promo. So there you go.
And that's enough for replayability, where you're not going to be able to predict what's out there or plan for it. So it creates that interest.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So thanks. That's Quebec by Pierre and Philippe. And Pierre says the chaining of buildings was Philippe's idea on this. So well done on the design, fellas. So thank you for designing a great game. Thanks everybody here for watching or playing and being available for this. Thanks everybody at home for watching this. Hopefully this either turns you on to a new game, or maybe inspires you to get some older games back onto the table. So there you go. And if you're a publisher watching this, the rights have reverted back to them. It's out of print. Just throwing that out there as a possibility. So anything else?
That's it.
All right. Due to personal stuff that's been going on behind the scenes, unfortunately, I haven't had time to prepare for tomorrow's live stream of Leaving Earth, so that's going to have to get postponed until next week. So I apologize to everybody. But on a positive note, that does free up a little bit of time. Martin and I are going to Martin's first time on the podcast. He volunteered to review Brass Birmingham, which is his it's Golden Elephant Award for this year. Last year. You get the idea. So you and I are going to be on the podcast. That'll be coming out on Monday. So listen for that. I'll be back Monday then with the weekly look ahead. We have a lot of exciting games coming out. We have Trismegistus from Board and Dice. We have BIOS Origins. We have High Frontier 4. We have PAX Transhumanity. Basically what I'm telling you is we have a lot coming from Ion Game Design. As well as Board and Dice.
Not Monday, probably, right, for the weekly.
Oh, right. Weekly look ahead might be on Sunday this week, or postponed to Tuesday, because, again, the personal stuff that's going on.
All my fault. Blame me.
It's her fault. There you go. No, life happens, all right? So thank you again to everybody. That was a lot of fun for us. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. If you guys liked it, like and subscribe down below. Support the show over on pledgehc.com. We're trying to get to 800 to upgrade the equipment one step further. So if you think this is worth $1 or $2 a month, we definitely would appreciate the support. Check it out over on pledgehc.com. Thanks again to Pierre for hanging out with us tonight and designing the game. We're out of here. I'm Edward.
Jess.
I'm Shrey.
And I'm Martin.
All right. Have a great night, guys. Have a great rest of your weekend. And football's back. Go Cowboys. Talk to y'all later.
Go Cowboys.